Today is May 28th, 2014, and the time is about 11 o'clock. I am taking an interview of Mr. English, and my name is Ali. Mr. English, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How's your day?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. So right now I'm going to take an interview for your memories in World War II. So can you please share what were your first thoughts when America declared war on Japan?
I was disappointed. I was glad we did, because when Japan declared war on us, I've never forgotten President Roosevelt got on the radio and said this was a day of infamy, December 7th, 1941. Mm-hmm. They had their ambassador there speaking quietly, and then they bombed Pearl Harbor. And then everybody was unified at that point. We had been involved in World War II in Europe, but this was now the attacking of our people, and we were all upset, unified at that point in time.
So, when you first heard about the war, did you rush to enlist in the army, or were you waiting for another position in the armed forces?
No, I wasn't doing anything. I was going to school. At that point, I was...
High school or college?
I was very young.
High school or college?
I was in middle school at that point in time.
When the war started?
When the war started.
1938?
I'm sorry?
So when the war started, you were in high school? And middle school?
I was in middle school. No, I was in high school
High
at
school.
that point in time.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that would have been 1941.
Since your record showed that you grew up in Pasadena, California, you were pretty close to Hawaii, is considered the closest, on main shore island. What were your reaction when you heard about the Pearl Harbor attack?
You get revenge.
Revenge?
Yeah, revenge. I mean, there was no reason for them to do that on us. We had people there for years and years and years, and for them to do that, and so everybody was unified at that point in time. And all of a sudden, everything was concerned with, let's get this war over and pay them back for what they have done to us. And it changed in so many ways. For example, as I had mentioned to you before, within a matter of not too many months, we had the automobile assembly plants in the Midwest, and they stopped manufacturing cars, and they began to manufacture tanks and other military trucks and things of this nature. Airplanes were being manufactured in the West Coast. My mother worked in an aircraft company as a river Lockheed Aircraft. We had victory gardens. Rationing went into effect with the majority of the food being the food and things like that going to the members of the armed forces. Once again, the country was unified. A draft was initiated in which young men over the age of 18, unless there were some medical problems or something like that, would get a draft number, and their number would be called, and as it was called up, then they would enter the armed forces. But it was also interesting, too, that there were lots of people who volunteered before the draft came to them because they wanted to get in and take part to help our country.
So, if you did not get into Naval Academy, would you have drafted? Would you have served as an enlisted personnel?
Oh, I would have, because I had been inducted into the Army. And if I hadn't gotten to the Naval Academy, I was still in the Navy. So I would have served out whatever my term would have been.
So there's a really dark side to World War II in America, that Japanese American being locked up in the camps.
Right, you and I have talked about that before. It's interesting because people were all the same out there at that time. It made no difference what your background was, whether you came from Europe, whether you came from China, wherever the case. One of my best friends was a fellow by the name of Mitsu Matsumoto. And the internment, there were two concerns. President Roosevelt was the president at that time, and he was concerned about the fact that although these people were supposedly loyal to the United States, that maybe they would have some allegiance to their country and could cause problems. So they took away their lands and put them in internment camps. And later on, I don't know how many years after that, they were reimbursed for what had happened to them. On the other hand, you might say, why would you do this? Because these are loyal people, but it would only take one or two to cause all kinds of problems. So they're both sides of that chapter.
So you're in favor or you're not in favor?
I probably was not in favor of it. But I'm a young boy, and this is my friend, and so...
How did you feel when you said goodbye to your family, left home, and went into the military?
I was excited about going into the military. I was sad about leaving my family because I was the only member of my family outside of my mother and my father. And we didn't have cell phones in those days, and it was too expensive to phone, so all the communication was by letter back and forth. And I knew it would be difficult for them, as it was for me.
Which theater award did you serve in?
Which one?
Theater award did you serve in?
Basically European.
European?
Yeah.
The Mediterranean?
Yeah.
Can you please describe the tour routes you took in the Mediterranean?
Well, you go on board the ship. On the ship, we carried the flag. We had the admiral on board our ship, and the task force was normally composed of an aircraft carrier, a heavy cruiser, a light cruiser, some submarines, destroyers, and then some supply ships. And we would patrol the Mediterranean from Gibraltar all the way down to the eastern end of the Mediterranean. And then we would go up into some of the outlying areas. We'd go up into Turkey, and we would go up into various parts of Italy, have joint exercises with other military people. Now, the war in Europe was winding down to that point in time, so there was no shooting going on. I think our presence helped to make sure that it wasn't resumed, because we were a pretty formidable force at that point in time. Does that answer your question?
It does. What did you believe was at stake if, God forbidding, America lost the war?
I never thought about that.
You never thought you were confident America was going to win?
I never thought about that. I guess remember, I remember my father. My father had been in the war, in World War I. My father-in-law had been a pilot, served as a pilot in World War II. But I never thought about our losing. I mean, there were some tough times out there in Japan and all out there, really, really tough times, and lots of people got killed in all those battles of Guadalcanal and places like that. President Roosevelt spoke frequently on the television. He would have what were called fireside chats, and he would give us information on the how we were doing in the wars, and that we believed him, and so we had a pretty good up-to-date information in how we were doing. And there were some really dark days during those. For example, as far as the Navy is concerned, the Japanese Navy was all powerful, and we're getting pushed back on lots of fronts. But then at one point, the big battle was the Battle of Midway, and we destroyed basically the Japanese Navy at that point.
3 aircraft carriers and over 300 airplanes.
Yeah,
That was devastating.
and that changed the program of the war. And of course, then Roosevelt died when he was in office. He had served 3 4-year terms, and then he was in his 4th term, and then he died, and the war was taken over by a man by the name of Harry Truman. Harry Truman came out of Independence, Missouri, was a clothing salesman and lower ranks in the party, but he was named vice president when he was elected president. He made some tough decisions, the toughest of all, which was the decision to drop the atomic bomb.
So do you think dropping the atomic bomb was smart of Truman, or should there be a land invasion?
No, I think he made the right decision. He made the decision, and he realized that if he had let the war continue to go on, it would kill millions of Americans. And so he made a decision. People can fault him one way or the other, but he made, and I think he made the right decision.
I'm judging that you're a big fan of FDR. Can you explain
No. Why am I a fan? I appreciated what he did, but he also did some other things which he set in various types of work programs where people were on the government payroll, and he started this idea of
the New Deal?
Yeah, the New Deal.
So you're not in favor of New Deal?
He did a lot of right things, but some of the things that he initiated, where people were getting money and not working, I really didn't appreciate that. I couldn't appreciate it at that point, but I do later on in life.
After the war was over, was it possible for you to put behind put behind the war? Was it, or did you was it hard to go back to civilian life after military?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It wasn't. The war had been over. Hi.
Sorry to interrupt.
The war was over. Remember then, when the war was over, I was still in the service, and I had been in the service for I don't know how many years after the wars were over. And my decision was to get out of the Navy. And to be perfectly honest, one of the major reasons was one of the programs I wanted to get into in the Navy was naval law. My feeling that if I could get a degree as a lawyer and also have my background in the Navy, that I could eventually leave the Navy and become a naval lawyer in an Admiralty law firm. But then they closed down that program, and they brought people from directly from law school into the Navy, and that eliminated that possibility for me.
Okay, how did you feel when you who was that? What was the name of the admiral you were of the ship you were on? USS
USS
Duel. Do you remember the names of the admirals?
I can't remember his first name.
Last name?
Can't remember his last name. I'm trying to think. That was a couple of years ago. I can't remember that.
What about Newport News? USS Newport News. That name of the admiral?
No, it was a captain on board the Newport. Roland Smoot, S-M-O-O-T.
Roland Smoot. Now, did you lose any family member or friend during the war? Any friends or acquaintance?
I'm sure I did, but that was a long time ago. I didn't lose any members of my immediate family.
That's good. Okay, so after the war ended, do you think that America should have been a bit harsher on the Japanese, or should McCarthy be the same as it was? How should Americans treat Japan after defeating them?
As Americans always do. We try to help it easier for them to get back to their normal way of life. Americans have never been people who carried grudges like that for a long time.
Do you think the Emperor Hirohito should be removed from his throne or not? Should have been removed from his throne? The Emperor, the Japanese Emperor.
Probably yes.
Not a big fan of Hirohito?
No.
Understandable.
He was the one who started the war, so no.
I mean, he directly did not start the war. It was his protege, his military commanders who forced him. But he was the one who he was the one who signed the treaty, to end the war. Wasn't he not the one who stopped the war too?
Yeah.
What do you think was probably the most important turning point of the war in the Pacific Theater?
The Battle of Midway.
Battle of Midway? What about Battle of Guadalcanal?
Guadalcanal was a big one too. But Guadalcanal was big. Midway, they were both big. Midway, that
3 aircraft carriers.
That really crushed the Japanese naval forces, and then we went on from that point on.
Okay. What do you think about the kamikazes? Do you appreciate their dedication, or or do you think they're too stupid? Like, what do you think about them?
They're killing themselves.
Like, would you do that for your country?
No.
No?
No.
So, if you were in the foot of, like, in the shoes of a kamikaze, what would you do?
If I were in the what?
In the shoes of the kamikazes, like if you were like in one of those, in the situation that they were in, what would you have done different?
I have no idea.
No idea? Do you have any memories you want to share with us? Any important events you were a part of? Like anything you want to tell us on record?
Not really. There are all kinds of memories, Emily, but nothing specific. I was glad when the war was over, as everyone else was, and then to get back to normal living.
Oh, one question from the start I neglected. Did the rationing make life harder during the war? The rationing of food, did it make life harder for civilians back home?
I don't think it made it harder. I looked on it as making you feel good about doing something because you're giving up a little bit, and you're giving up for the people who are giving a lot, who are serving for the armed forces and taking their lives on the line. So, no, I didn't find that difficult.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. English. Appreciate your time.
I hope that's of some help to you.
Yep. Thank you. Have a nice day.
You're welcome. You too.